Hello, this is the Keyholing podcast with Lemon. I've got a very prestigious guest this week. We're going to talk about pseudoscience around guns. I have the absolute legend himself, Chairmanwon. How are you doing today, Chairman?
I am doing real good, Lemon. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we get into the heavy air quote science stuff, something people relatively recently may know you for is the P320 fiasco. If you could like dive into that, kind of like their incompetence, like the transparency issues with some companies, and like kind of your thoughts on that.
Sure. Just regarding the P320. Personally, I don't understand the kind of mechanism behind the so-called uncommanded discharges. So I'm not really going to talk about that because A, I don't understand it. And quite honestly, it kind of seems like the gun equivalent of Bigfoot, right? We have a lot of videos claiming it happened just off screen and stuff like that,
and people have talked about it at length too. Like it's been like
sure, but people talked about Glocks being unsafe when they rolled out to police departments initially, and that had to do with training, holsters. People weren't used to a gun like the Glock, so it actually developed a reputation as a very unsafe gun when it initially started being adopted by U.S. police departments. Do I think that's what's going on with the P320 and the uncommanded discharges? Not necessarily, but I also haven't seen proof positive that it's, real and systemic until, someone... I think Protoband is doing a really good job exposing, quality control issues and things like that. But until someone can really demonstrate that happening repeatably, it's just not going to be something that I would want to talk about. What really turned me off of the P320 is just this kind of unforgivable design error when it comes to the over-insertion protection, the extractor, and, basically, the ability to brick a P320 doing factory reloads with a factory magazine and a factory frame. So, I purchased one, had some cool work done to it, was really excited to kind of get into the platform. And I went to go put a magwell on it, and turns out the magazine that I had wasn't compatible with the SIG magwell. That kind of set off red flags for me, and I basically started digging into it and realized that, you had to switch to this Legion base plate to be able to use the magwell. Okay, well, why don't they all ship with the Legion base plate if you need that to use accessories? Wouldn't that just be the default base plate? Well, it's not the default base plate because it strips away all the over insertion protection. And so that kind of took me down the rabbit hole with the P320. And, that alone completely turned me off the gun. I remember I was kind of explaining my theory to P80 Ralph at his house. And he was kind of poo-pooing it and playing with his P320, saying that I was overreacting. And while he was making fun of me over it, he recreated the issue.
That's awesome.
And broke his gun. And, we had a pretty good laugh about that.
That's awesome. Ralph's a character. As far as the discharges go, it's kind of a Hanlon's razor thing to me where... never ascribe to malice what can adequately be explained with incompetence. Because police are historically incompetent with their guns. One of my favorite examples, I can't remember where it was, but the reason it discharged is they hung it on the coat hanger when he was taking a shit, which is, dudes rock. That is so awesome. But so to me it's you're right, I'm not really that interested in that. Now the over insertion, that was even a hot topic on Twitter people claiming well, just don't hit it as hard, just don't over insert it. All sorts of pushback on that, which was kind of surprising to me.
I mean, I would say the people who didn't see the issue like plainly were just a pretty small, minority of kind of diehard siggers. There's no handgun out there that doesn't attempt to have some form of over-insertion protection beyond just the mag release. And the mag release isn't over-insertion protection. A mag can go past the mag release for many reasons besides just, you fat fingered, you rode the mag release while you were doing a reload. Magazines wear out and can skip past the mag release. Mag releases wear out and cannot properly engage a magazine going in. Stuff gets dirty. The spring tension can, fail out. In cold weather, springs don't return as quickly. If mag releases were over insertion protection, that's just what guns would use, and we wouldn't have even a term for over insertion protection outside of a mag release. So that's obviously a silly argument. And I thought I really put the issue to bed, taking my own P320 and just showing how easy it was to do. I don't even bench 2 plates yet, so I'm a scrawny manlet, and it took 3, just reasonable taps to bend the mag release to a point, bend the ejector to a point where the gun was not functional without repair. So that would take you out of a gunfight for sure, even if you could repair the gun. And that's not even getting into the unrepairability of the P320 when it comes to damage from over insertion.
No, definitely. It's like that's part of the problem. Is it's not, if it happens, it's not a simple fix, and also a gun is a tool. You should be able to be rough with it without, that's often the beta requirements is being rough with this, fuck shit up, see what abuse it can take. And
I mean, there's a reason that the M17 and M18 use one type of magazine that interfaces with the frame with discrete wings that provide that over insertion protection. SIG did it correctly there. They flubbed it when taking the P320 and making it this modular civilian platform.
Definitely, and moving to a better modular platform. I understand the RXM particularly caught your interest when it came out. Where do you see that platform going? And I know that's something you're working on right now. Kind of, what's your vision for that platform?
Well, I've always had a vested interest in chassis Glocks taking off. I'm never gonna charge for files or sell just random merch, to beg for those sweet internet dollars. If I'm gonna charge for something, I'd want it to be a real product that people want to buy. So I've always looked for a way to, take my frame designs and turn those into a commercial product. Even, going pretty far into talks with a, company that makes well-regarded, aftermarket Glock frames. But the economics of it just don't really work. You have to sell a lot of frames to recoup just your investment in tooling, actually shooting those molds at a, the place where you run those molds has to actually be the FFL, because when those come out of the mold, they're actual guns. So ITAR comes in, those molds have to be made in America. They have to be run at an FFL. I mean, you're more than $100,000 in for a tool and getting set up for a part that really should be more like $10,000 in tooling.
Definitely, and I think that's I think one thing people don't understand is how cost prohibitive these ventures are. which is why, like, obviously, like, doing it at home, DIY, is great. And based Chairmanwon for providing free files, thecatalog.com. He's published a ton of stuff. Go check it out. If you somehow don't, I don't know how you're listening to this podcast if you don't know who he is. But we're in Q4 right now. So what are some guns and platforms you see taking off next year? Like, if you look into 2026, what are some guns and platforms you think could become popular or just potentially get new iterations, things of that nature?
You know, for 2026, I'm hoping to really stay laser focused on, Gen 3 Glock as a platform, and the RXM. So kind of getting back to chassis Glocks, the reason I want a chassis Glock to take off in the market is because if one does, I can sell, cheap to develop and, cheap to tool up frames, for that platform. So I do have a vested interest in seeing a platform like the RXM take off, but, it's the same vested interest that anyone designing or selling, Glock compatible frames has, right? It really lowers the barrier to entry. We'll see a lot more cool stuff if the RXM, becomes a really popular platform. One of my big, goals for next year is to start shopping around, I don't see any new platforms on the horizon, right? I think the American gun industry is really correctly, circled the wagons around a default rifle in the AR-15, and I think we're in the process of doing that with Gen 3 Glock. My goal for 2026 is to do what I can to accelerate Gen 3 Glock really being America's handgun in the way that the AR-15 is America's rifle. And there's still some outstanding issues that need to be addressed before we really get there.
Definitely. And what I see, obviously, I assume you've looked at the Gen 4 push and everything of that nature. Does that actually present like a problem, or is it just kind of them throwing anything in the way of Gen 3 progress to potentially cause hiccups wherever they can?
I'm not sure what you mean by the Gen 4 push.
As far as like California and things of that nature.
You mean I think you mean more like the V Glocks.
Oh yeah, sorry, I said Gen 4. Yeah, the V Glocks. Yes.
No, actually, I think that really helps Gen 3, take its place as America's handgun platform. Gen 4 and 5 compatibility has always been an open question when it comes to Gen 3, and like designing for Glock. But Glock has essentially, with this V Glock move, thrown away, close to 20 years of product development on 4 and 5, and, gone straight to this new kind of deliberately incompatible platform. So no, I think that just solidifies Gen 3 as the default handgun.
No, and I agree. I see this kind of as an effect where people I see talking on Facebook, I had people who were vaguely into guns in real life asking me about this, who had never thought about what Gen 3 Glock was, just said they had a Glock, right? Never thought about the model, anything of that nature. We saw Gen 3 sales numbers go crazy after this was announced. Of course, the panic buy of they're going to be go away, or casuals simply seeing the news. So I think that really actually brought it to the forefront, and already Glock, the V model, is being dismissed because it's not even I don't want to really get into it because it's totally in the weeds, but it doesn't make an auto serum possible by any means.
It's obviously just a regulatory move, and that's fine. Normal consumers will never notice the difference between a V Glock and the previous generations. I expect them to be just as reliable and to be a good product. Like I don't think I would ever recommend someone in my life not buy a V Glock versus whatever, right? It's a non-issue for the majority of consumers.
No, definitely, I totally agree. As far as we talk like more into 3D printed guns and things of that nature, we have some stinky chairs in the community. So what if someone's looking to buy a chair, what's the best budget chair you would recommend for them?
What kind of chair, right?
Yeah, right. So like maybe so for people that don't know your history, this is your like real people job, right? Like you really do this. So potentially for like a desk chair, maybe budget around like 250, 300, and then like going from there, if you have no budget, like if you can go up to like the $1,500, $2,000 range, what are the options for people?
Honestly, it's kind of the same all around. What I would steer away from is any type of gaming chair or any type of assemble it yourself kind of like Walmart chair when it comes to at least desk chairs. The quality difference is just immense. Like a fair market price where the company that's making it is hitting a 20% margin, and actually be able to keep the lights on is in that $1,000 to $2,000 range for a truly quality desk chair. But the nice thing about quality desk chairs is they maintain their quality for a very long time. I've never purchased a new desk chair in my life. Really any Herman Miller, Steelcase, Knoll, any of like the good contract brands, you can find their desk chairs used on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, all day, every day. The safest bet is probably a Herman Miller Aeron, just because so many of the things were made, and they have a mesh construction that is super simple to clean to factory new with just dish soap and a hose. And in the unlikely event that something is broken, it's such a popular model that you can buy cheap replacement parts, no problem. But there's nothing about the Aeron that's better than a Herman Miller Leap or a Knoll. I'm forgetting the Knoll chair name, but yeah, I mean any quality contract desk chair can be found for $200 to $300 on Facebook Marketplace. New, it's really just whatever you like the most. Stick with good established brands. Desk chair engineering is very expensive. The molds are very expensive. The components themselves are very expensive. So, steer clear of any new budget chairs. Look for a Herman Miller, look for a Knoll, look for a Steelcase. There are some other good brands too. Okamura out of Japan is a great dark horse desk chair brand. But yeah, I mean, expect to pay anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 new for a really good one. But if you have that budget, Design Within Reach, Restoration Hardware, there's a few other vendors, but there are showrooms where you can go and try out a variety of them and just choose whatever fits your body the best.
But I mean, it does sound like a buy once, cry once kind of thing. Especially, I mean, honestly, the Facebook Marketplace is a great call, especially if you just set your location to like the higher end business areas in your city. You see them going out as businesses leave frequently. Like, it's...
Yeah, and in a lot of, especially cities, you can find like office furniture liquidation companies. You'll pay slightly more. You might pay more like $350 for an Aeron, but they'll have a lot of them, and they'll have some other, brands as well. So you can really go in there and like choose the cream of the crop. So the chair I'm sitting in right now is a Herman Miller. It's not an Aeron, but I got this from, I want to say A office furniture liquidator in San Antonio, and I'm extremely happy with it. I've never broken a contract grade office chair, and I don't expect to. So
Awesome, and it really is a science, like this construction and engineering of these contract grade products. What's not a science, which is claims to be a science as we kind of transition into the main topic of the episode, is I want to kind of like hit multiple issues at once, these are all things that are given credence in academia, given credence by prosecutors, have put people in jail. First, I want to go over like kind of ballistics. When people say ballistics, they picture this NCIS where they find a bullet, they immediately know what...
Yeah, you get your big titty goth
Yes.
science girl to
Yes.
do a direct match. Yeah, I mean,
Which, I mean, like, to be fair, the world does need more big titty goth science girls, but that's the part we need more of. But essentially, none of this is, I don't want to say none of this is real, right? But essentially, it's Rorschach testing. What they do is, and you'll see this in court proceedings often, anyone that's unfamiliar, basically what they say is it could have come from this gun. And kind of what we're going to transition to is what they're going to do with printers is they're going to say it could have come from this printer. In theory, not eliminating other guns or other printers, but establishing that it potentially could have come from this gun or printer. For those that don't know, essentially to change the impression from a firing pin on a casing, you literally need to file it. That's it. I'm not saying do that, but I'm just saying if someone wanted to, they could file it and completely change that impression. How fast do you think, if you needed to, you could file a firing pin?
10 seconds once I had the file in my hand.
But
I would also say that would leave traces on the firing pin that would be noticeable under microscopy. But my recommendation would just be to replace the firing pin, right?
Definitely, and they're widely available. They're talk about like swappable. There's tens of millions of Glock Gen 3 firing pins in the United States. Probably hundreds of millions. And so that's the ballistics aspect, which again, none of what you see on TV is real. Essentially, a bullet can't be tracked down to a gun, and I'm emphasizing this because it will be brought up later as evidence for printers being able to track down if a print came from this printer, because it is referenced as, well, we can do this with bullets and guns, we can do this with printers and prints, and that's just not the case.
I will say in criminal justice, there's obviously some utility to being able to say, well, this bullet could have come from this gun. It couldn't have come from 50% of other guns out there, right? It's not definitive, but there might be some evidentiary value there.
No, I think there is utility. I think it's largely misused. So an analogy I'll make is like if it could have come from an Ender 3, right? Like how many Ender 3s are out there? If it could have come from a Glock Gen 3, like...
No, I got you.
But totally, I get what you're saying, and I think there is utility to it. Part of my argument is going to be kind of differentiating that utility from like actual what I believe is malicious, trying to specifically target people, if that makes sense.
Sure, and that makes perfect sense.
Next up is microstamping. So this was big for Kamala Harris. Pushed this a lot. It's also something you see on TV. In fact, my wife, who's like completely like offline, not really into guns, just assumed this was real. until I explained to her the process. So, where do you remember first encountering the concept of microstamping, or what you thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, before I knew anything about guns, it seemed like a reasonable thing. But obviously, once you know anything about it, it's a technology that doesn't exist. It's a concept.
Essentially, yes. Like, when people, like, it's actually, legislation was built around it. There is still legislation on the books in many states, particularly, we talk about Kamala Harris, California, discussing microstamping and, like, putting forth requirements for it and things of that nature, and it simply doesn't exist. It is a very intriguing sci-fi type concept, though, and it makes sense if you think about it in that nature of, oh, you put an identifier on a bullet, right? You put an identifier on the casing, and then you know who purchased that or know where that came from, and it simply just doesn't work that way. It doesn't exist. There's, as far as I know, not even like close to existing, and it is also referenced. The reason I bring this up is it's also referenced in these tracking print scenarios as, oh, potentially we do microstamp bullets. Potentially we could have printers microstamp prints, and regardless of like whether that's technically possible or anything like that, the analogy itself is just not. You can't accept that analogy because microstamping again does not exist.
Yeah, I mean, I as a guy who grew up in DC and is kind of immersed in that world. I mean, you just kind of have to remember that none of these are real arguments, and the people making them don't care if they're real arguments or not. Like, it's just a game played with legislation to achieve a completely different goal, right? Like, no one in California cares if bullets are microstamped or not. The obvious purpose of the legislation is to restrict, the guns that can be sold, and it would be by any means, right?
No, definitely.
Microstamping made it through because Americans worship technology, and senators are retarded boomers. So you combine those two, and it's like, oh, there's this whiz-bang magic technology that'll let us catch criminals, right? But like, I would just caution against, taking too many of these like pseudoscientific arguments at face value for like anyone watching, because it's not, it'll never be about that. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. That's a great point, and something I struggle with, because as an autistic person, I see an argument and I'm like, okay, they're acting in good faith. I'm an actual retard. They're acting in good faith. Sure, let me tell you why this is wrong. But in actuality, you're totally right. It's always going to...
If these people were acting in good faith, all of the efforts to restrict guns would be confined to handguns, right? There would be no push ever to restrict rifles, because, just by the numbers, rifle crime is essentially non-existent. Like, it's just not even a factor. I distinctly remember the argument about assault weapons bans in Maryland, and it was this whole big, political hullabaloo. And for the last year we had records on, before that debate, 2 people in the state of Maryland died by rifle, compared to 400, like 500 something by handgun. And, it's not that these people don't care about the facts or the figures or anything like that. They just want political talking. They want a political win, and they think they can get that with 3D printed guns, assault weapons, anything that you can market as scary. And you just can't market handguns as scary because, middle America considers it, hey, it's the thing that's in my nightstand to stop someone from coming in and murdering my family.
And has been for decades at this point, right?
And politicians will never, they know that they'll never change that on handguns, even though that, I would guess that 99% of national homicides are attributable to handguns, not rifles, right?
Oh, definitely. And you're totally correct in the way that they just want to disarm people to get these political points. They don't care about the argument itself or the technology itself, supposed technology, or the process itself even. They just want to be looked at as if they're getting a win, as if they're disarming people. And
yeah, and you also have to remember that a lot of these people don't actually care about disarming people. They don't conceive of danger like that. They don't consider that armed people might ever pose a danger to people they love or themselves or their loved ones. They're batting for a team and they want to hit. They want a home run. They want to get on base. These people are career politicians. They want they want any type of win, right? It doesn't matter, if one of these guys woke up tomorrow to a sweetheart job with Firearms Policy Coalition, they would switch sides and start arguing that, guns are the best thing ever and try to get that win.
No, I think that is a great point as far as you want these people with power and things of that nature. I'm going to push back a little bit. I think there has been a shift in this, how do I want to phrase it? This, the liberal, quote, new progressive movement as far as Spanberger in Virginia, governor, future governor, apparently, was actually a Moms Demand Action volunteer. And how, I don't want to get far into it because there are some people who are conspiracists who will definitely listen to this, and I'm somewhat of one myself, but a former CIA agent being a Moms Demand Action volunteer is a little funny. It's at least funny. And I've seen multiple. Another one that's been popular in dim circles. What's her name? In Maine, I think. But regardless, I think there has been a shift as far as looking at these scary weapons and saying, no, we really can take these scary weapons from people. But in general, you're totally right. The large majority of these people are sellouts who will do anything for a check or power or promises of power and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as someone who grew up about 10,000 feet away from CIA headquarters, that doesn't surprise me at all. It's one of the most heavily blue areas of the country, for the people who are actually on the ground there, be it on the North Virginia side or the Maryland side. But the actual, politicos who are writing laws, pushing laws through, most of them are policy amoral. They don't particularly care, right? They don't particularly care about what team they're on. They don't particularly care what legislation they're pushing through. It's a game of power to them.
Definitely, and we see that at the highest point, Donald Trump, right, for the longest time identified as a Democrat, campaigned for Democrats. When being a Republican became an opportunity, he immediately took that and ran with it. Moving on to the last one I want to hit is ShotSpotter, which there are still defenders of this. If you guys go right now and tweet about ShotSpotter, the CEO will actually likely respond to you. I made an offhand ShotSpotter tweet, just a small joke, and was said something to the effect of, these technologies like ShotSpotter are bullshit. And he responds and says, well, this isn't ShotSpotter though. And something we'll see later on in these arguments is the argument for AI sound detection, obviously, but as well as like AI detection of gun prints. So before you print a gun, this magical AI sees a file and determines it's a gun.
Yeah, that'll never happen.
And now for a quick ad break. Here we have Control Pew's merit badges at controlpew.com. We have the 3011, the AK, the FGC9, the Mac. This is what I have, the AR. It's a great conversation starter for people that may not know or may not be interested in 3D2A. And if you spot a buddy that knows what it is, build some connections while supporting someone in our community. Control Pew does a ton of stuff. For example, the Control Pew Getting Started guide, which is something I recommend to anybody, those new or even if you just need a refresher. Anything at controlpew.com is 5% off with code LEMONAID, Lemon AID. We have tons of stuff, cleaning mats, flags, posters to rep the community. We also have some Hawaiian button-down shirts. You'll see my Soy Jack wearing it in every episode of Season 1 of Keyholing, as well as you'll probably see me wearing it in real life, the FGC 9 Lives Hawaiian button-down shirt. There's 4 other versions here as well, modeled by PSR. Absolutely, go check out controlpew.com. Use code LEMONAID, Lemon AID. Keyholing Podcast loves MAFCorp. MAFCorp does a great job getting parts and kits in people's hands for cheap prices while maintaining quality and being a great representative of the 3D2A gun culture. Right here we have their Sunshine 19 Builders combo meal, the Glock Gen 3 that many gun tubers have screeched about that is going away. Go buy it. Well, it is still here, and you can get 10% off anything at MAF using code Lemon Snowcone, Lemon SNOW Cone. But yeah, it builds your whole Glock out here. They now have slides. They have the rails from Aves. They have the DD rails as well. Go check out MAFCorp for all your part needs. My friend Yeezy Print stays the topic of discussion because he makes electric products like this. Are those level 4 plates doormat? Very, very sick. We've got the Hunt the Rich camo shirt, magnets, hats, stickers as well. Arm the Poor, Eat the Rich, a classic, one of his first launches that went very well. Super cool. People really enjoyed this. And my favorite here, I'm not going to say it. It is spicy, but it's what the Second Amendment is for. It's actually called the Second Amendment Collection, and you can support the channel by using the link in the video. I'll put it in the description below this video. And in the podcast description as well. Some cool stickers. Your papa didn't run shine through these hollows for you to be a bootlicker. And ain't that right? Salute Yeezy Prince. Check out American Years of Lead.
So you'll have to red pill me on Shot Spotter. I don't know too much about it besides, the basic that you have sensors around a city and it attempts to triangulate gunshots and tell police, so there was a gunshot on this block.
Yeah, essentially that's correct. So basically what it does is, and that's the idea is get police out faster to these areas using this automated sound detection system. And there's multiple companies. It's not just ShotSpotter, but there's a few others, but they all essentially run the same type of concept. They use the same pitching language to cities. These systems cost cities tens of millions of dollars. But the issue they run into is they actually waste police dollars because things are often confused as gunshots. So one thing that's been a huge issue is construction noises. So construction noises, loud machinery, particularly in like city areas. Backfire. Go ahead.
You fire a nail gun, like it's going to sound like a gunshot for sure.
No, definitely. And to a lesser extent, obviously not as common, but very common, backfiring cars. a car or a truck. They've had huge diesel trucks, set these off frequently. And also around holidays particularly, which are known as a time for increased violence. People are more drunk.
Yeah, I mean, fireworks, stuff like that, for sure.
Definitely, exactly. That's exactly where I was going, fireworks. And I've actually got this study pulled up. I will link it in the video, but basically they took partially blocked experimental designs. 17 acoustic centers were co-located with CCTVs. So basically what they did is they had these TVs out to cross-verify that what these sensors were detecting were actual gunshots.
So basically it's just sending police out for bullshit reasons. Yeah, I mean, that seems like it could be the case. I believe it.
Absolutely. Like the results after implementation of the auto acoustic gunshot detection system, gunshot incidents increased 259%. So police were responding to this 259%. However, there was no significant increase in the number of confirmed shootings. So basically, making police do more work with under the guise of we're going to catch more criminals with this, and they could not confirm any more shootings. This is in a ton of cities, and there's a great article by a few, I can't remember what platform it is, but I will link that under the video as well. And
yeah, I know we had it when I lived in Baltimore, but you know, I never really gave it much thought.
No, definitely. And it, like, I think one thing as people see how much, obviously people are struggling right now. Always are going to be, depending on the economy. But as people see cities blowing this money essentially on something that doesn't work, I wonder if that shifts, like police saying we need to allocate this budget to something else or something of that nature, purely speculative on a sidebar, but another thing that just doesn't work. A lot of this is pseudoscience. And again, this is something you would see in NCIS. A shot is fired, and so they locate the sniper on top of the building because they coordinate all these traffic cameras and acoustic sensors. And again, just not reality. Like, in reality, does it detect noise? Yes. Can it really tell if there's gunshots? Kinda. Does it help police? No.
I mean, fair enough. I would support that, research being known by the general public, and the general public, being able to make that decision.
Definitely, exactly.
I don't. Like I said, it's I had no idea that it was as ineffective as you're saying, but what you're saying makes perfect sense.
No, definitely. And it's like, once people think about it in general, and you mentioned it, like just knowing it was in Baltimore, and it's like, a lot of people like understand it exists, and the concept does, it's kind of like we talked about earlier, like the concept does make sense. There's this thing that identifies gunshots, tells police where to go. Very simple. But in reality, it's like you have these, particularly they're in like high density urban areas, the noise is, and I know a lot of us, like a lot of listeners may live in rural areas, but the noise is going to be like absurd. The noise is going to be very loud, particularly with trucks, construction, and things like that. That was one of the primary drivers, was construction. And like anyone that lives in a city will tell you there's always construction going on somehow, always, generally.
Yeah, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, because I don't think you could ever do anything about the fireworks, but I mean, I would assume with construction you could, like, basically like geofence a construction zone and say like, hey, ignore anything coming from this area.
I think you probably could. I just don't know. I don't know if the capabilities of, or if they care enough, right? I think part of the reason one thing ShotSpotter promotes is their high number of incidents detected. So I think they are somewhat incentivized to say, to kind of include those in the numbers and say, oh, well, we detected this many incidents.
And that makes sense. And I mean, that would never cover like a homeowner, you know, thwacking on a nail just to like fix something. So yeah, I mean, what you're saying makes perfect sense. So like, it seems like a technology that good idea maybe on paper, but in practice, you know, you have to let the results speak for themselves. Definitely.
And kind of transitioning fully to like the inspecting of 3D prints now. And I know you prefaced it earlier saying like these people want to do like there is incentive for them to enact laws and things of that nature. There's also financial incentive for these academics, right? So I've got this academic from The Hague. It's been over 2 years since I conducted forensic trace research into the tracing of 3D printed firearm parts to the 3D printer used. Since then, I've been able to give presentations for the CTER, Impact in Madrid, Europol, Interpol, CSAC in Albania, and the ENFSI. It is nice that people from all over the world are still seeking contact and asking to work together. If cases are actually offered, I am certainly prepared to carry out these investigations. I really want to highlight this part. If cases are actually offered, I'm certainly prepared to carry out these investigations. Requests have already come from Belgium and France, so do not hesitate to contact me. I mean, assuredly, like, this is total bullshit. And if you had a good lawyer, I'm sure get thrown out at some point. A lawyer that knew what he was doing. But I mean, we've got this senior forensic science toolmark investigator saying, contact me if you have an investigation for me. And so these academics are incentivized to fund further research, to potentially get jobs with companies. You mentioned a politician getting a job with FPC, for example, getting a job with a company that licenses or teaches people to identify these, goes around to police departments, gets money from them for training. And so there's an entire industry behind this that I think is important to take into consideration when viewing this from that lens.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I'd be surprised if this ever makes it into a courtroom, at least in the United States. But and to my knowledge, it hasn't. But we'll have to keep a close eye out for that. But it's so speculative, the variables. I've seen the papers on this, but like, I mean, I don't know how you would even prove it, right? Like, let's say I shot someone with a 3D printed gun, and I ditched the gun, right? So they found the gun, but they haven't tied it to me. I become a suspect. They confiscate somehow, and they confiscate my printer. Okay, so I think for that to like be valuable evidence in the first place, even if like the actual forensics works properly, like let's say it is repeatable, they would have to have the exact G code that I used, the same filament, same nozzle. Like, they would have to assume, I don't even know how you'd clear like having the exact same G code. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. Like, if the humidity is different that day and you printed it in a nylon, like, there's like so many variables that could slightly.
Yeah, I mean, like, hell, like, I can't. We all struggle to get consistent prints. Like, they would have to. Yeah, I don't see it ever making its way into a courtroom.
No, that's a great point. I can't even get my consecutive two prints to look alike, so much less reproduce them exactly, for sure.
Yeah, to like be able to prove. I mean, like, okay, like, and I can see an edge case where you might be able to prove something, right? Like, let's say I'm a weirdo and I always print at 0.14, right? Like, whatever. But like, I ignore the standard 0.16. I always print 0.14. So they come to my house, they confiscate all my shit, and they could say in a court, hey, look, we found all these other 3D printed parts in his house. They're all magenta printed at 0.14. The gun we found was a magenta gun printed at 0.14. That's not a standard print setting. It defaults to 0.16. That's weird. And look, he uses 0.14 everywhere. Like, okay, yeah, that's...
It becomes more compelling to me at that point.
Yeah, but like, to me, that just kind of comes down to like, more just like good old-fashioned police work. Yeah, I mean, you would need like a smart investigator to like to find that and to like make the connection. So, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that makes it into a courtroom, but this forensic micro tool tracking, I would be shocked if there is ever a successful conviction, or and I would even if there isn't a conviction, I would be shocked if that evidence is ever allowed to be submitted into a courtroom in the United States. It's just too speculative.
I would as well, particularly here. In theory, this does absolutely worry me, like, significantly more. Like, I don't think this is a realistic future in the United States, kind of like what you mentioned. Like, even as obsessed with technology, obsessed with, like, the sci-fi aspect of that, there's not... This is even too out of bounds for that, I think, as far as speculation goes. Because like, I'm going to reference this a bunch. It's Rorschach testing to me.
I was about to say the same thing. I mean, like, looking at that picture on the left, like, there's no... Those just look like zoomed-in pictures of 3D prints.
Actually, you know what I'm kind of seeing now? It kind of looks like the marks on boobies. So now I'm kind of thinking about boobies.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there is. I would be surprised if there's never a conviction attributable to some sort of 3D printer forensics, but I just don't think it'll be this type of 3D printer forensics. I think, hey, you could probably identify what filament was used, right? You subpoena someone's Amazon records. Oh, okay, they bought this same filament. We seized their computer. They had their supports set up. Their supports default to tree supports. This was set up with tree supports. Oh, like they posted a picture to social media of not this gun, but a different gun, but look, it was printed at the same angle. And that's the angle that this gun was printed at. Like, I could see stuff like that. This, I don't think will ever go anywhere.
No, definitely. I totally agree. And I think even the problem with that is how in-depth a investigator would have to be. As far as how many prints they would have to look at to understand what they're looking for. And I think this would be the general problem. You mentioned pictures, is people posting pictures of, even if not the gun, similar guns, posting pictures of them. I wouldn't be surprised, obviously, if someone commits a crime and then you find on Instagram Live of them shooting the gun into the woods or something of that nature. But I don't think this specific goes anywhere in the United States. Now, I'm much more worried about this as far as feasibility-wise in fucking Europe and shit like that, because they just they're extra freaking out about the ghost guns. Ghost guns scary.
But I mean, here's the thing: like, if you have laws that guns are illegal, essentially, all 3D printed guns are illegal. Possessing the files are illegal. I just don't think that there would ever be a case that hinged on this versus like just normal like surveillance.
No,
right?
definitely. This could never be a primary form of evidence, I think.
And it would just have to be like, this is gonna be so in-depth and expensive. I mean, like, assume you already know for a fact that you'll get this evidence admitted, which I would not take at face value. But assume you knew that. You know, you'd be spending, I would assume, at least $100,000 to like make a convincing match here with the amount of work you'd have to put in.
The cost of microscopes, like everything of that nature is.
Yeah, and just like the human capital to like do this.
That reminds me of a really interesting case. So our good friend AG on his channel, he watched the Channel 4 UK video of them going behind the scenes of a 3D printed gun investigation, and they are caught on camera saying we can't prove he printed the gun. They found it with the gun with the printer in his cabinet, and they still couldn't prove he printed the gun. He ended up getting gun charges. He didn't get wasn't charged.
Manufacturing charges.
Yeah, the manufacturing charges essentially were didn't exist essentially because even in that situation of them finding the gun and printer together, they couldn't.
Yeah, who pushed the button, right?
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to that. So I think you're totally right. However, the problem I have is that academics are pushing this. I have this article from 404.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, academics are always going to research retarded shit. Like, that, again, academics are kind of like politicians. Like, they're just worried about their next paycheck. Like, if it bleeds, it leads. Like, if they can be doing research that ties into some public hysteria, they're going to push that research.
No, definitely. Absolutely.
And you know, the reality is we know of 2 criminal shootings by 3D printed gun in the United States. Both of them were solved. I mean, you know, Luigi, I mean, innocent until proven guilty, but both of them were solved with good old fashioned police work, right? Like, they caught the guy with the gun.
No, definitely. And the most recent one being in Arizona, which I think will be interesting to see as it develops.
Oh, right. I forgot there was a third one.
So, but I mean, again, we're talking about, you talked about the number scale of handguns to rifles earlier. The number scale from total incidents to 3D printed gun incidents is a number so small we can't like calculate it. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I think you could convincingly make the case that 3D printed guns are actually the safest class of weapons in the United States, right? I mean, there's been, I guess it's 3 now, but 3 criminal shootings in 13 years of them existing. I don't know of, I bet in that same time period, there's been more criminal shootings with black powder guns. That's just something that I would bet. But, like, it's just not a remotely dangerous class of weapon. You know, there's kind of a filter for 3D printed guns. There's kind of like a intelligence test, right, to get into it in the first place. And, you know, unless there's like a political motivation like you saw with Luigi, you know, smart people typically don't commit gun crime. It's like that. There's like that Iraqi proverb about there's like a bookseller's market in Baghdad where they just leave the books out at night, and there's a proverb about it where it's like, you know, readers don't steal and criminals don't read. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think you kind of have a similar thing with 3D printed guns where, you know, any mouth-breathing retard can go buy a gun from the store, steal a gun or whatever, but it does, you know, I mean, it doesn't take like a fucking 130 IQ to print a gun, but like, I don't think you're doing it at a fucking 80 IQ.
No, and the process is more in depth, right? You have a lot of gun crimes, and I can't remember the statistics, are crimes of passion or crimes in the moment. And in the moment, even if you start your bamboo in the moment and you're like, I'm going to shoot someone with this gun, it's going to take a few hours. And so I think that is a really interesting point. Another issue I want to stress as far as, because this is presented by the media as not only are ghost guns dangerous, they're more dangerous than regular guns. Your hand's gonna get blown off. It's scary. You have to be an expert to do it, and that's not the truth at all. Like, essentially, when I had never taken a rifle apart before I built my Hoffman. I had never examined the inside of one. I had never thought beyond gun go boom. Right? I had never thought beyond that, and so that's how I learned how the rifle worked, is by assembling the trigger, putting it in the rifle, putting the safety in, doing all the processes made me understand, and I think in totality make it more safe, because I understood how it worked at that point. Is there credence to that?
I think there is. And just, this is anecdotal, but I mean, I've only heard of one person being injured by a 3D printed gun, blowing up in their hand, essentially, and that was Suckboy Tony developing 3D printed ammunition and having them chain fire in his hand. But that's just experimental design work, that's...
No, and he understood what he was doing. But yeah, exactly. You kind of have to exclude people like that, and like Pimby when he's hand loading shotgun shells and puts a shit ton of powder in it.
I knew a guy once who, printed one of my Glocks out of soft TPU, and it's like, man, I'm here for it, but if you fucking get hurt, you're doing something stupid.
No, definitely. It's like, if you follow the instructions, and I talked about this with our friend Uberclay, if you follow the instructions, it's pretty much impossible to hurt yourself. To the point of, if you follow the walls, even if you don't, honestly, if the infill's right, designs are so quality now, and the frames themselves are often little load bearing or not at all.
And certainly with ARs and Glocks, both of those, all of the pressure bearing components are still just the normal metal components. The worst thing you'll do is break some plastic, but you'll never have a condition just by virtue of parts of the gun being 3D printed that results in an overpressure event, which is where the danger would be, right? No. If you're shooting a 3D printed Glock at the range and it fails, that failure is a broken frame, not an out of battery discharge.
Definitely. Often the failure is it stops working. That's essentially the failure.
That's the most typical failure.
not it exploded in my hand, or it maimed my friend, or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my line with Politico retards is that 3D printed guns are the safest class of guns in the United States, and I challenge you to prove me wrong.
I love that, and I'm going to start repeating that. You've filled me on that already. It didn't take very long, and it wasn't very hard, but I'm going to start repeating that, because it's true. It's true. It's effectively true. It's
literally and actually true.
Yeah,
there's no stat that you could come up with that refutes that. I was really surprised that after the Luigi thing, we didn't see, there's been an infinite increased percent in ghost gun murder in 2025, sound the alarms, or 2024, sound the alarms, but yeah, I mean, it's, and honestly, I think the Luigi thing actually ended up kind of rehabilitating ghost guns to some extent. I had to talk to quite a few journalists after that, and to a T, all of them didn't believe me that it was the first known death by 3D printed gun. And once they understood that what I was saying was true, like, the tone of the conversation completely shifted. Like, it is unbelievable. If you just read the news, you know, if you haven't, like, looked into this.
No, definitely. And it's like,
that is unbelievable, but it's true. That was the first death by 3D printed gun that anyone knows of in the United States.
Definitely. And I love that you mentioned that, because it often is, like, the people I see taking these arguments as valid are fellow media, potential fellow academics, things of that nature, who I think are legitimately, like, not good people, but I think they have made potentially integrity, but they just trust what the media has said. They trust the appeal to humanity argument of, well, it's scary.
A lot of people are just spectacularly uninformed. You know, I allowed one journalist to come visit, and it was this journalist from Kyoto, because, you know, I try to not talk to journalists if I can avoid it. You know, the only journalists that I talked to after the Luigi thing were just journalists who had my docs. So, you know, I talked to them basically under the condition, hey, you have my information. I'm part of the story. You know, you can run my stuff. Yeah, that's your right. But if you want quotes or an interview, we can talk for as long as you want. Just agree to quote me only as Chairmanwon, and we're cool.
Which is a very fair trade, and you were...
Everyone took me up on it.
And I wonder, like, one thing I do want to discuss about the Luigi case as a whole, as far as, like, 3D printed gun legitimacy goes, is a lot of people immediately jump to, and I know this isn't, like, necessarily your area of expertise, but you're well knowledgeable. The 3D printed suppressors don't work, or
it seemed to work fine. It didn't have a Nelson device.
Literally, exactly it. That was it. And you had, for example, Stephen Gutowski of The Reload, people knowledgeable about guns in that, like, general media space, saying, hey, it needs a Nielsen device. This is why it didn't work. But
I mean, it worked fine. He, on video, was obviously anticipating having to hand cycle. And, I mean, we don't know, but the lack of Nielsen device could have been a deliberate choice, right? You know, a lot of very spooky, you know, assassination guns deliberately don't allow the bolt to cycle, because that's the second noisiest part of the action. You know, the lack of a Nielsen device absolutely could have been an intentional choice to not allow the gun to cycle and to do a quieter hand load.
No, definitely.
We don't know.
Especially because at that point, while he used one of your, well, he allegedly used one of your older models.
Yeah, we can drop the allegedly. We'll preface this by saying everyone is innocent until proven guilty. We're just going to talk about this like normal people from here on in.
Definitely. And so the idea that it is really interesting that it could have potentially avoided a Nielsen device on purpose is very interesting, and I haven't really seen it brought up, so I think that's a great point to make around it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. But it's certainly possible. Regardless, I mean, the gun obviously worked. You know, a man is dead and another man is in jail, and it's being attributed to a gun and suppressor combo that clearly did what the person who used it intended it to do. So,
no, definitely, and I am glad you corrected my verbiage there. I said didn't work. When we don't know if it didn't work as intended, but it did work. Like, it worked extremely well.
You can see on video, he's anticipating the manual cycling of the action. It's not a surprise to him. He has shot the gun before. He knows that he has to do that. The gun is functioning as he expects it to function.
No, definitely. And that was one of the arguments originally, is, oh, he was surprised by this. But you're totally right. He immediately, like, you have to have trained in that scenario for it to be as effective as he was at immediately. He knew, objectively.
Yeah, I don't know how much training you need for that, but he wasn't surprised by it. He knew that was the next step to fire the next shot.
Absolutely. And in regard to, like, knowing things are gonna work, I just want to go into this 404 article. One of the scientists who was cheering on this lady earlier at The Hague said
he wouldn't be comfortable using any of this in court.
Yeah, it's like, nah, I can't use this in court. And then it's like, even if it doesn't work, and this is not a possibility, we still found out new information. So even if this doesn't work, I grifted and got some cash off of it.
Hey, I'm going to push back on you a little bit there. I mean, that is scientific inquiry, right? Like, we should be happy about negative or ambiguous results attempting anything, right?
No, definitely. I think that's true. I just think juxtaposing it with
so the articles being like, oh yeah, like we're going to be able to, like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know who this Garrison guy is, but I mean, that seems like a responsible statement.
No,
I have no issue with that last paragraph.
I totally agree. I think this is responsible. I think juxtaposing it with, he's actually, I'll pull this screenshot up here. Where did I already close it? I think I might have closed it, but he was cheering on the Hague lady, saying these are replicable results. So it's like, I understand, like, this, if this was the main part of the article, and I said this at the time when it came out, this is actually true. This is true.
You might be, like, misreading what replicable results mean in this context. Like, I don't think he's changed his position that, hey, this isn't something that we can use in court, but, like, being able to replicate another researcher's results is a very important step to, just pushing the process forward. So,
and giving him the benefit of the doubt, maybe he wasn't reading, but posting on LinkedIn and excitedly over a person saying, like, sign me up for cases, it's kind of like talking out of both sides of the mouth to me.
It's ghoulish.
But like you talked about earlier, that's part of academia.
And as far as I can tell, like, this lady's theory kind of works. Like, she can obviously replicate it in a lab, in a controlled setup. Okay. I just have, I would just take Garrison's exact quote there, where it's, just because you can replicate this in a lab doesn't mean it'll ever be ready for the courtroom. And I just can't imagine a world where something this speculative would make it into a courtroom.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You could defeat it in a heartbeat, right? Like, let's say this made it into a courtroom. You could release a Clipper macro tomorrow that just added, like, 0.01% random movement in X, Y, and Z every 10 seconds. Right? Like, even if, like, this did make it into a courtroom, even if this became good science, like, you wouldn't even need to switch nozzles to defeat this. Like, you could just make a Clipper macro that randomizes the prints enough to completely invalidate it.
No, definitely. And I think, like, that is, like, the end goal. Like, the like conclusion to that is this isn't ever going to appear in court. Like, In like the studies, one run by the University of Illinois used 4 printers, and it was all the same brand. This study they're referencing in 404 used one type of printer. It was the Prusa MK4. So like these aren't like heavily developed. It's not coming to you now. I don't want it to be like a scare tactic of people freaking out, changing nozzles after every print, because it's not in any foreseeable future at this time. Something I want to pull up now, kind of pivoting from academia industry to the industry around, kind of we mentioned earlier, around training cops. And the quote from this account, whoever it was, Lemon related probably, is suspended. But
yeah, I think that was a quote tweet.
Yeah, it says they have this pretty funny website review time. Gotta say, dig the print and to leave nothing to chance, held up by the tree supports. True, that's fire as fuck.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Not gonna lie, nice touch. This timeline is unchanged though. LOL, apparently the Milwaukee Glock is more noteworthy than the FGC. Experts indeed. We have, I don't want to highlight this one guy too much. I'm going to, but all of these type of companies are run by similar people. There's one you all might be familiar with on Twitter or X, White Worm Labs. That's Zoltan Ferretti. He runs, this is LNC Consulting with Victor Cardona. Zoltan Ferretti runs, let me see, I have it here. The Defrag Group, which is another group that hosts these inert weapons, takes them to police training, things of that nature. And I just checked because I was wondering, they should have taken your notes on the timeline. Totally agree with this. If anyone would know the timeline, it would be you. However, I checked, and at this point now 6 hours ago, they're still using this timeline. Here. And nothing has changed, really. It's pretty much the same verbiage. So, I mean, I don't really expect them to change it or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, these guys will never get any business. Like, they're doing the thing that some people do, which is to just basically conflate ghost guns with 3D printed guns. And... Again, just, 3D printed gun crime is essentially non-existent. So, they're going to try to drum up interest with these big numbers about ghost guns.
No, definitely. And they're even using this new verbiage. People might see it, PMF, privately manufactured firearm.
Which, actually, I like that verbiage.
I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. So we see here 1,600% increase in use of DIY firearms in NYC crime since 2020. So basically, that's almost like entirely
P80s.
Yeah, so it's 99.9% P80s and then Luigi, essentially, right? Like,
yeah.
So that's why I don't like it, is because it shifts Ghost Gun to P80s, which, aside from like P80, all the legal battles being banned from certain states, whatever else may come from that, it gives them crime statistics to use that are not actually attributable to what people think of as 3D printed ghost guns, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like, it's just a different term for ghost guns. And, every time someone says PMF, it's just a time they're not saying ghost guns, which, I mean, hey, props to the Politico who came up with ghost guns. Like, fire word, super scary. Like, it's pretty rad branding. But yeah, I mean,
So you like PMF more because of its more scientific naming? Is that like?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just instead of ghost gun, yeah. I mean,
okay.
It's accurate, and it's not like emotionally loaded. Stop. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem with it. The alternative is ghost gun, not like a true, like, honest differentiation between 3D printed guns and like 80%.
No, that's true.
Which again, you're just never going to see from people like this. Like, anyone who's like willing to like have the conversation and learn something is super open to that. Like, this journalist from Kyoto, like, one of the reasons he wanted to come to the United States to like talk about this is like after Luigi, but also, you know, he thought that, you know, 26,000 3D printed guns had been recovered or some, you know, crazy thing. And, you know, like the first night, I deliberately kind of like threw this guy off his foot. I invited AG and like another person who spoke good Japanese, and I Japanese dinner, and kind of like you know, fucking like hospitality to him, and kind of threw him off his game. But he didn't get. He thought they were the same thing, and when we were like, no, like 3D printed guns is like one. P80s is like the multiple thousands. He was like, fuck. Like,
yeah, I just came all this way.
that was my story. And, you know, in his, to his, you know, in Credence Satoshi, like, really great guy, like, you know, the story he wrote was totally fine. Like, he talked about 3D printed guns and like the difference between 3D printed guns and, you know, P80s, and you know, I thought I was very, very fairly treated in it. You know, he characterized me as a gun otaku, not some type of like criminal or terrorist or anything like that. But, you know, I mean, it's like, to me, that's the type of person who, like, this type of distinction is worth, you know, explaining to.
No, definitely.
They're just ignorant.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, they just don't know. People like this know. They're just trying to use imprecise language to not technically lie, but like deliberately mislead, you know?
No, definitely. They do know what they're doing. And I think that brings up a good point. And a lot of people think, like, generally it's true, the 3D printed gun community is unwelcome to journalists and things of that nature. When people approach in good faith...
Rightfully so.
Yeah, yep. Rightfully so. But when people approach in good faith and generally try and learn, I think for the large portion, like, people are open to helping them, explaining the differences, explaining absolutely. How it works.
This is one of the most friendly communities out there, without a doubt, and it's typically populated by helpful autistic retards who just want to, you know, make some friends and pursue a cool hobby.
No, definitely. I think that may be the scariest part, is like breaking the conversation, because there are people who will talk your ear off for sure about 3D printed guns, and I think that is so awesome. And you mentioned friendliest community. Totally true. I get this perception, particularly from liberals. I'm on Blue Sky because I love torturing myself, and that, like, it's scary, and all these people just want to kill people. It's like this completely trumped up the media idea of it, and I'm glad you and others are putting that to, like, bed in a way, as far as it's just not true. Like, people are so welcoming, particularly if you come in, like, willing to learn, willing to talk about it. Another example, James Stout, who went to Myanmar and talked to the Myanmar rebels about 3D printing guns. They were super open and like, wow, someone's talking about us. Someone's showing us attention. They let him take pictures. He got to interview people. And so when people come in good faith and with an interest to learn, that's totally different than the traditional journalist emailing saying, do you have comment to follow up Cody Wilson on 3D printed guns? That's pretty much the normal question.
I never really fully appreciated Cody Wilson until I became a target for some journalists, because in more than one article they quoted him directly after me. And I will say, it's nice to have your quotes followed up by Cody Wilson quotes.
Oh, definitely.
Because, I'm listen, I'm from DC. I don't even have like strong like libertarian views. I mean, I'm even out of step with, you know, a lot of my followers, but to follow up, like, you know, essentially like reasonable comments that I was making with, oh, a CEO got killed, oh, it's a 3D printed gun. Yeah, more CEOs should be killed by 3D printed guns. Like, we should have more of that. And then to have that be like, you know, convicted pedophile Cody Wilson says that more CEOs should be killed by 3D printed guns. It's great to have your quote right before that, because no matter what you say, you sound a lot more reasonable.
No, definitely. And another interesting point is, like, you and a lot of others are like largely apolitical in general. Like, politic is gun, right? Like, pro-gun.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'm extremely interested in politics. Like, I'm from DC. I love politics. I love following it. It's
theater, right? It's
a hobby of mine. Like, I quite enjoy it, but, you know, I just respect the people that follow me. They don't follow me to hear my takes on Ukraine or trans bathrooms, right? Like, they, you know, if I talk about politics, it's going to be about gun politics, and usually more specifically politics around 3D printed guns, right?
Definitely. And like, there's this.
I just don't expect anyone who follows. I know for a fact that no one who follows me on Twitter followed me to hear my like hot takes about unrelated political issue.
No, definitely. But I think that is important, right? Because I think that particularly the liberal perception is every gun person is MAGA, and not only that, but every gun person pushes MAGA, and that's just not true either. That's like objectively not true. Like, in general, like you mentioned, like, I've never seen you post anything political, really, like, ever, aside from gun-related content. And so,
you know, I slipped up a little bit in the lead up to like Trump bombing Iran and like right after. Man, I got a little sick of isolationist posting and let loose with a few of my thoughts around that. But I think that has been my only real slip up in a few years of posting. So,
which, hey, in a time like this, that's more than fair, right? One or two slip ups feels realistic.
Try not to make a habit of it.
Definitely. And so, like, as we like kind of come to a conclusion here and wrap everything up in general, like, one thing I want to stress, which you stressed throughout the episode, is these aren't coming for you now. These aren't real. These technologies aren't real. They aren't, you aren't going to be locked in a cage with this. If you're in America, you are going to be locked in a cage with this for sure, anytime soon. And another thing I kind of just want to stress is something we hit on is the fascination with technology and science. And it's very normal and human. We mentioned multiple times, hey, these do make sense from a human perspective. This science, in theory, makes sense, but just in practice, it doesn't work now, or it doesn't exist now even. And
you know, it's again, you know, America as a country, we do worship technology, like, and not without good reason. But us and our politicians are very susceptible to, and you know, we get it on both sides of the 3D printed gun stuff, right? Like, you know, the antis, you know, kind of worship 3D printed guns as a unholy boogeyman, you know, way out of scale to their actual danger in America, entirely based on this worship of technology. Like, this is the perfect fusion of two things that, you know, a thing that they hate, guns, and a thing that they worship, technology. Like, it's just perfect catnip for those types of people.
Most definitely, and I love that you hit on the technology part, because in a way we're on the other side of that coin. As I love 3D printing. It's magic every time it happens. It's fantastic every time it happens. It's still unbelievable to me. I don't know if that's the same way for you or everyone else.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, you know, if I accidentally stand in front of a 3D printer for like more than a couple seconds, like I'll stand there for a couple minutes.
No, definitely.
And just watch the layers go down and just kind of marvel that like this is a thing that's possible. And like, you know, now like really using it like extensively in work too, it's like it's just crazy how many problems it solves for me, right? Like, and just how cheap it is. Like, I mean, I can literally like buy new printers just to like solve task, right? Because like if I don't have a printer that's big enough, like, or I need another one to meet a deadline, like what's $1,200 for another SVO8 Max if that lets me obviate making a sample in China and shipping it over, right? Like,
no, definitely.
Solving one problem now like can justify a whole 3D printer purchase, and then just like it just keeps paying dividends. Like,
you mentioned the cost of prototyping earlier. I know 3D printing has, like, particularly as far as like American manufacturing goes, made it significantly faster and cheaper to do something, as opposed to getting something from China, waiting for the shipping time, things of that nature. And it's the purpose of it. It's a tool, right? It's an awesome tool. It rocks.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you know, for me, I mean, it obviates like. I mean, it's just a prototype shop in a box, like, because like to do a lot of this, like to make any product that's like good, you need to iterate, you know, a lot to hone in on, you know, correct form, and being able to do that in a cycle of like, you know, I can iterate multiple parts a day, multiple times, and get the parts in my hand the same day. I mean, it's just, I could still do my job without 3D printers, but I would need a massive staff to approach anywhere near the level of productivity. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. Manpower, time, all of those factored in. And I want to say, we'll wrap up now. I want to say thank you for coming on. I very much appreciate your time. An absolute legend. If anyone isn't following, go follow him. My man made time for me on a weeknight. Always love the chairman. Is there anything you want to plug, brother? Anything you want to people looking out for, or anything like that?
You back on Twitter yet, or
not yet, because this is 1984. This is what George Orwell warned about. It's actually, if you go back and look at it, right after the AirPods, he predicted Lemon will repeatedly get banned from Twitter. So that's what we're.
What did you even do to get banned for?
So the first time was. It was 3D printed gun related. I was literally posting 3D printed gun memes, and I don't know if I got posted in a Discord, mass reporting Discord, or something of that nature. I definitely am. I do pick fights with people because I think challenging beliefs is important, and I really want these people to do challenge beliefs. I got banned for that, and then this time around, our friend Yeezy, I was posting some links to Yeezy's shop, and they got banned. Proud friend of the podcast, Yeezy. So I'm appealing now. Hopefully I'm back. Till then, you can find me on Blue Sky, Lemon Squirts 3D, and I will be terrorizing the libs for the time being. So thank you all, and I will talk to you later. Bye.